Food delivery apps are a scam. Do you want to get Chinese food? Uber Eats. Do you want to get Indian food? Uber Eats. Do you want to get burgers? Uber Eats. Do you want to get pizza? Well, maybe DoorDash. Food delivery has become a ubiquitous service that virtually everyone uses. In fact, 86% of Americans use food delivery at least once a month. 31% use it at least twice a week, and as for millennials, this is basically their entire diet. This is not too surprising given the extraordinary convenience of these food delivery apps. You can order from virtually any restaurant in your vicinity, and they have it delivered to your doorstep within an hour. This is in stark contrast to food delivery just 10 years ago, when your options were basically just pizza. This unprecedented surge has allowed for the food delivery industry to thrive, with several apps popping up from Uber Eats and DoorDash to GrubHub and Postmates. But while these apps sure are convenient, they're not exactly a great deal for anyone. The average American spends $37.28 every week on food delivery, which translates to $150 per month or over $1,800 per year. And over a third of that amount is simply going towards service fees, delivery fees, and tips, coming in at $13 per order or $650 per year. But I'm sure you already knew that. For most people, food delivery is more of a guilty pleasure than anything. But unlike Netflix binging and singing in your car, this habit will cost you a lot more. In fact, if young adults simply invested food delivery money into the S&P 500 between the ages of 20 and 65, they would end up with an extra $715,000 instead of a bunch of empty Panda Express boxes. But it's not just end consumers who are getting a bad bargain either. Food delivery is also not that great for restaurants, delivery drivers, or even the food delivery apps themselves. Yet, the popularity of food delivery is only continuing to skyrocket. So, here's why food delivery apps are kind of a scam for everyone, and why no one seems to care anyway. We all know that food delivery is expensive, but just how expensive is it? Well, let's do the math. Single adults tend to spend between $59 and $91 every week at the grocery store, so about an average of $75 per week. There's no stats about how much single adults spend on food delivery, but we do know how much Gen Zers spend on food delivery, which should be pretty close. The average Gen Zer spends about $30 per food delivery order. So even ordering food delivery just once a week would increase the average person's food budget by almost 50%. Twice a week would increase the budget by 80%, and 3 times a week would increase the budget by 120%. For those of you who use food delivery every day, I know you're watching, you're increasing your food budget by nearly 300%, spending $210 every week on food delivery. On the bright side, your grocery bill is probably far lower than average, but that's not exactly a net positive. To make things worse, this shortfall will only compound throughout your life. Just one food delivery per week will set your retirement back $600,000, obviously assuming that you invest your money well instead. This means that 2 deliveries per week is costing you $1.2 million, 3 deliveries is costing you $1.8 million, and a delivery every day is costing you $4.2 million. At that point, that could literally be your entire retirement. The only way that this is not a bad financial decision is if you're already investing $100,000 or more every year. At that rate, you'd be worth $40 million by the time you're 65. So $4.2 million would still be a large amount, but percentage-wise, it's not terrible. I suspect that most of you aren't investing $100,000 every year though, so probably best to cut back on the food delivery. Now, I know what some of you are already saying. What's the point of having so much money at retirement if you didn't even get to enjoy the journey there? And that is valid. 74% of people say that they would show up to an event if they knew the food was going to be good. So there's no doubt that food plays a big role in people's lives. This brings us to Exhibit B though, which is how much money is going towards the food itself and how much is going towards delivery. It may seem like you're just paying a delivery fee and a tip, but that's just what's shown. You see, restaurants know that people are willing to pay more for the same food when it's offered for delivery. And they've taken the liberty to increase prices across the board on delivery apps. Take Panda Express, for example. A family feast costs $39 at the restaurant, but it costs between $45 and $47 on delivery apps. It might not seem like a big difference, but when you combine this with the delivery fees and service fees, it becomes quite egregious. The same Subway order costs 25% more on GrubHub, 46% more on DoorDash, 63% more on Postmates, and 91% more on Uber Eats, and that's not even accounting for a tip. On average, people tip 15.7% for food deliveries, so really, you're spending an extra 40 to 100% over your meal price just for the delivery. Let's call it an average of 70%. Here's what this means long term. 247,000 of this is going to delivery. 494,000 of this is going to delivery. $741,000 of this is going to delivery. And a disgusting $1.7 million of this is going to delivery. That's enough money to make a grown man cry, but all of that is just the consumer side of things. YouTube has very much glamorized the life of delivery drivers. Trying to make $500 in a day, trying to make $700 in a day, trying to make $10,000 in a month. I mean, there's nothing wrong with these videos. They're fun, entertaining challenges, but don't take them for anything more than just that. While delivering food may be lucrative for broke college students and young adults, it's not exactly as good as it sounds, especially as a career. To reach numbers like $10,000 per month, delivery drivers have to work 12 to 15 hours every single day. And when you do the math, it's not all that great. Even calling it just 12 hours per day, delivery drivers have to work 360 hours per month to reach those numbers. If delivery drivers worked a more reasonable 40 hours per week or 160 hours per month, they'd make about $53,000 per year, which doesn't sound too bad. But that number is actually super misleading because most of us contextualize that number as a job. I mean, that's how much teachers and police officers make. But the difference between making $53,000 on Uber Eats and making $53,000 on a job is day. First of all, the job is infinitely more stable, but let's put that aside as there's plenty of other attributes to discuss. For example, most of the numbers you see on YouTube are top-line numbers that don't account for gas or depreciation of the car. But let's even put that aside. The real first obstacle that you'll face as a delivery driver is taxes. As a delivery driver, your tax status will be self-employed, which means that you have to pay both sides of Social Security and Medicare tax. This adds up to an extra 7.65% every single year. So earning $53,000 on Uber Eats is effectively the same as earning $49,000 at a job, and that's just because of taxes. Next, you have to deal with health insurance. Most people making $49,000 per year have some sort of government job or low-end private job. Either way though, the benefits are pretty strong in most cases. The average teacher, for example, gets $10,500 in health insurance benefits. As a delivery driver, you'll have to pay this amount out of pocket, which takes your salary down to $38,500. After that, we have retirement benefits. Police officers, for example, get as much as $29,000 towards retirement every year. If you're trying to match this as a delivery driver, you'll be down to less than $10,000 in net income. But we can be more conservative. Let's say you're missing out on $5,000 in retirement benefits. That still knocks you down to $33,500. Most jobs will also have paid time off, sick days, and other perks. But if you want these as a delivery driver, you'll have to pay it out of pocket, which will bring your net income to below $30,000. But it gets even worse. When you hear that police officers and teachers make $50,000 or $60,000, that's truly an average across the nation. These jobs exist in every community and every city across the world, really. The opportunity to do Uber Eats full-time, however, only exists in the highest cost of living cities like New York, San Francisco, London, Austin, etc. I mean, you're not gonna be very busy if you're trying to do Uber Eats in Nebraska. In many of these high cost of living cities, the minimum wage itself is $15 per hour, which translates to just over $30,000 per year. So, while top-line numbers on YouTube challenges may look appealing, driving for these food delivery apps is basically just an unstable minimum wage job. It's not just consumers and the drivers that are getting screwed over by these apps either. Restaurants are also getting the short end of the stick. Have you ever wondered why delivery prices are relatively affordable? Of course, we've discussed how even these small $10 to $15 fees can add up over time, but in terms of face value, it's not too big of a fee to have any restaurant delivered to your doorstep. Well, the reason for this is that you're not the only one that's paying. Restaurants have to pay exorbitant amounts to be listed on these food delivery apps, which was basically required during the pandemic. On DoorDash, for example, restaurants have to pay 15, 25, or 30% depending on how much they want DoorDash to push their restaurant. DoorDash also gets an additional 6% commission on pickup orders, given that they can't charge you a delivery fee. Uber Eats and all of the other delivery apps have virtually identical pricing plans. And given that restaurants tend to have pretty meager profit margins of 3 to 5%, there's no question that these fees weigh down on these businesses quite a bit. This is the main reason that restaurants mark up their food so heavily on these delivery apps in the first place. Oftentimes, they have to charge that much more just to break even. They also have no option to avoid these apps either, because the pandemic transitioned much of their customer base to delivery. But delivery apps aren't just hurting the bottom line of restaurants, they're also oftentimes hurting their reputation. You see, first, these delivery apps use extremely aggressive salespeople to convince restaurant owners to list their restaurants. But if they don't agree to do it voluntarily, these apps often just go ahead and list the restaurants. Anyway, they figured that most owners don't have the time, money, or energy to take these corporations to court. Maybe 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000 will actually sue and win, but this doesn't really matter for these apps. They're basically having to pay $300,000 or $500,000 for every 10,000 restaurants that they list. So listing these restaurants without the owner's permission is a no-brainer net positive. The same, however, cannot be said for owners. When these apps list menus without their permission, they often end up using outdated menus and prices. So customers end up ordering something and get mad when they realize that the food is no longer being offered or costs more than they thought. Customers will naturally get mad at the restaurant and think, why don't these people even keep their menus up to date? But in reality, it wasn't even the restaurant's fault. These frustrations don't just apply to wrongfully listed restaurants either. Correctly listed restaurants have their own set of headaches with the delivery drivers and angry customers. For example, drivers have the ability to drop an order up until they pick it up, and this happens more often than you think. The driver arrives at the store and sees that the line is super long, or they find a more lucrative delivery, or whatever the reason may be. If another driver doesn't accept to do the delivery, the food is ready and the customers want the food. But the food will never get to the customer. The customer will want a refund, and the restaurant will have lost out on the food and the money. Little to say, there's not much for restaurants to get excited about when it comes to food delivery apps. With customers getting screwed over, drivers getting screwed over, and restaurants getting screwed over, you would think that at least the food delivery apps must be coming out on top. But this is also not the case. All food delivery apps lose money, and the most popular ones lose the most money. Inflation is only making these losses even worse, with most delivery apps posting record losses. In the last 12 months, DoorDash lost a record $1.36 billion, but that's nothing in comparison to Uber's $9.1 billion loss. For Uber, this isn't even a record, as they've been casually losing $8 to $10 billion for 4 years now. With all the fees they charge everyone, this might be a bit confusing, but when you think about it, it all makes sense. The only food industry that has mastered delivery and is able to stay profitable is pizza chains, and they have to make a lot of sacrifices to achieve this. Every restaurant only delivers to a very small radius. They have full-time delivery drivers, and they've refined the delivery process to be extremely efficient over decades of doing this. Modern delivery apps are basically the exact opposite of this. Drivers usually have to go to different restaurants for each delivery. They have to deliver to a very big radius, and the drivers generally choose deliveries based on how lucrative they are, as opposed to how efficient they are for the overall platform. Given this combination, it's no wonder why delivery apps are struggling to turn a profit. The bottom line is that delivering from any restaurant to any doorstep is simply a logistical nightmare that requires a bunch of man hours, which is not cost effective by any means and never will be. In the meantime, everyone from drivers and consumers to restaurants and delivery apps will have to put up with the associated expenses. And to think that all of this pain for everyone can be traced back to us being too lazy not just to cook, but even pick up cooked food. How often do you use food delivery apps? Comment that down below. Also, drop a like if this video made you look at food delivery differently. And of course, consider checking out our Discord community to suggest future video ideas and consider subscribing to see more questions logically answered. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.